Literally right in the middle of a good conversation.
Right in the middle of a good conversation, man.
Ring.
Dude, it's been a couple of weeks. How's it, right? It's been like 2 weeks.
2, at least.
Yeah, 2. Yeah, because I was out of town last week.
You're going out of town again?
Well, when we go to Cancun.
This guy.
Shaking it up.
You got your beach bod?
Mm-hmm. my beach dad bod.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, man. Who needs a beach bod anyway? He's got time for that.
I've been trying.
Yeah,
I work out every day, but
dude,
doesn't want to fall off.
I was talking to Joe, our CEO over at Rainmaker, and like he's up there in age, man. But this guy runs like hundreds and hundreds of miles, does 1 billion push-ups every day. Like no joke. I think he does 500 push-ups every day. Yeah. He like sets a goal for the whole year, and then he like, breaks it up between 365, whatever, and then he just does that many push-ups. But I was like, man, I've just been so lethargic since I turned 40, and he's like, you just got to walk more, man. He's like, there's no vitamin on the planet. He's like, you just got to walk more.
Right.
Walk more, walk more, walk more. If you get into running, run more. Like, but just being more mobile. He's like getting all the blood flow and all that stuff. I was like, man, I got a bad sciatica, dude. Like, my legs go numb.
Pedal bike.
Yeah. Something. Well, ever since I went to that VA appointment, man, he hit something. Like, he was going down my back, and then he just tapped something. And from that point on, man, like, I haven't been able to get comfortable. My neck hurts. My back hurts. My legs go numb if I sit too long. So I'm in bad shape right now.
I go get this shot in the biscuits at the VA. I don't know the name of the shot. I just tell them that one shot, I need that shot. Mm-hmm. It helps with the sciatica, like, within a day. I'm good, and it lasts for about 3-4 months for me, and it's a nice little thing. So
yeah,
I recommend it. I mean, go ask for the shot. I don't know what the name of it is.
It's not a cortisone?
No, it's not like a cortisone shot. I don't think. I've had plenty of those. Those don't work for me at all.
Yeah,
kind of mask the pain a little bit sometimes, but this sciatica shot that I get, it definitely knocks that out, especially on road trips. I don't feel it.
You know what I just realized? This is the first time I've seen you without a hat on.
Yeah. When you got a fresh baldy yesterday.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. It was like, what is different? Yep. Never seen that beautiful bald head of yours before.
Yeah, man. Started taking it down. Come home one day, man. I was going bald. I had the convertible top with the tinted windows on the side. I said, this gotta go, baby.
that's why I got to keep my hair short or wear a cap, because I got that Ginobili thing going on, my new Ginobili thing going on, where it's just like back, just right here, like it just balding out and just looking like a clown. So
took it down. It's over. When it's over, man.
Yeah,
just gotta let it go.
See, but I got a weird shaped head, and I okay, so back to basic training. When you get your, they shave your head. Mm-hmm. I just have like fear from that, because I just remember how peanut head I looked, how stupid I looked back then, that I just can't get that visual out of my mind of that. And then the glasses, the military glasses that they give you.
The BCGs. Yes, sir.
Yeah. The BCGs. And then,
now they get to choose their frames.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got a lot better. Like, they put their cell phones away. They give them to them. So that, like, we used to march down, go get the calling card, at least when I was in, and call home or whatever. Nah, Bubba and them, they turned in their cell phones, and then on Sundays when they got calls, the RDC just give them their cell phone.
Yeah.
And here you go, make a call.
You know how much easier? So that, I was at MTI at Lackland.
Yeah.
It was so much easier. I hand out all their phones. You got 10 minutes, go. 10 minutes up, turn them off. And so calls are done in 20 minutes.
Easy.
Because a lot of these trainees, they didn't even know how to fill out like an envelope. I would have to teach them how to fill out an envelope to mail.
Yeah.
Could you imagine trying to teach them how to use a payphone and a calling card? Like, you'd be there for hours, and now you can get calls done.
Easy.
10, 15 minutes.
Man, so when I was in basic, I left in It's like late April, early May, something like that. And so we were in that cycle where, you know, we're going to go through Father's Day, you know, and I wasn't going to be near my dad for the first time in my life. And so we go line up to go make our phone call home on Father's Day. And, you know, you got to race the thing, right? Because you're like 1-800, blah, blah, blah. And then you got to put in the number for your calling card. By that time, you get 3 minutes to make a phone call home. By the time you get through all that, you probably got maybe 60 seconds of talk time before anything else, right? Well, I get through it. This is not a working number. What? Do it again. This is not a working number. I'm like, I know I dialed that number right. I know my house number. Well, come to find out, because we had knuckleheads, we hadn't been getting mail. And so we finally get our mail. My parents changed the phone number. So I'm over here calling a disconnected number, you know, trying to get a hold of my dad. And it was like 2 or 3 weeks later that I finally found out that that they had changed the number, and, you know, they decided to send me a letter, let me know.
This number is disconnected or no longer in service.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, wait, no, there's no way. Like, this has been the number my entire life. There's no way.
Picked a great time.
Oh, dude.
To change a phone number.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
while you're at BMs.
Let's wait till he goes to boot camp.
Yeah. He's gone. We already painted the room. We changed the phone number.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
They moved. Like,
didn't tell me nothing. Didn't tell me nothing.
They went on vacation. Just
all kinds of stuff, man. But speaking of that, what, as a drill, from your time when you went through boot to, what was it, like 15, 16 years? Or how long was it in between when you went to, when you were an instructor?
Yeah, it was about 15, 16 years.
How different was it from when you went through to?
So I never went through Air Force BMT.
Oh, because you had already
I went
gone
through Coast Guard BMT. And so I went through a 2-week program. But I also got there in the wake of the 2010, 2011 scandal at Lackland. And so the pendulum was swung way to the right or left, whichever direction. And so our hands were severely tied. And what blew my mind was how many people still flirted with that line. Like, the line was clearly there, and people like would just dance on that line a little bit, and you're like, man, you're playing with fire.
Don't do it.
But I don't know. I think, you know, a lot of stuff that I remember going through basic with, like, the humiliation stuff, right? Where people get in trouble and they just have to do something really, really stupid and humiliating. There was no reason for it, right? There was no training. Like, what does making you look stupid do for your training?
Right.
There's other ways to punish or give a reaction to an action other than completely humiliating someone. So I think, like, that all went away, which be creative. You're an NCO. You should be able to have a conversation and discipline your airmen when they do something wrong.
Right.
Because in once you get out and you're in the operational side, you're not doing the training jukebox when one of your subordinates do something wrong, right? Like, you're dealing with it professionally.
Right.
And so I think, like, that stuff going away was good. I have mixed emotions on how much we could PT trainees, but just like there's a label on your hair dryer that you can't use it in the tub, right? It's because someone did it, right? So I think people were taking it too far, and actually hurting people, which should never be. I mean, could you imagine your child goes to basic and just someone that is pushing them to the point they get severely injured? Like, you're trusting, all these parents and guardians are trusting us with their children, whether, you know, their spouses or whatever. And so I think a lot of these changes, I think, were for the better. I think old hats have a hard time with it because they're like, well, when I went through basic, you know, the kids these days, no, you know, guess what? Like, the same thing was said about you because the generation before you thought they had it worse.
Right.
And the generation before them, you know, so every generation thinks they had it worse, and all these guys, so I was, you know, the environment was hard to push a flight through at times, but once you got used to it, and if you got the respect of your flight, you had no problems.
Yeah.
You know, just like a supervisor would. If your team respects you, they're going to work hard for you.
Absolutely.
You know, and so that was your challenge, and that was always my personal challenge. If I tried to never have to yell past the third week, I figured after the third week of training, if I'm still yelling, I'm doing something wrong. I should have the buy-in at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a different mindset. I think if I had my brother here sitting across the table, because he was a DI, he was a drill instructor or drill sergeant in the Army, I think his mentality, his mindset would be completely different. I think he would be the one that is going to the extreme of, we're yelling, we're pushing, we're every the book of names that you could call a trainee, right? he'd probably have it. But I think there's a difference in people that get into being in the instruction side of the military. There's a different mindset for everybody. And so there's some that are level-headed like you, and there's others that are hot-headed, and so.
Well, I also think too, and to be fair, is the Air Force's mission versus the Army mission is completely different.
True.
I'm not the major majority of the people that went through BMT, are not going to combat.
Yeah.
They're not going to charge a hill. They're not going to do anything extremely dangerous. Versus in the Army or in the Marines, a majority of those individuals are going to go be put in harm's way. Yeah. And there's a different level you have to train to get somebody there.
Yeah, you have to push that line just a little bit more.
That's a fair assumption.
To change them mentally.
Yeah, that's a fair assumption. That's a very fair assumption. I remember my mindset when I was going through basic training was more of like, okay, we're pushing. Like, I'm just getting stronger. Like, I'm just getting ready. I'm just getting stronger. That was my mindset. I'd see other people pushing and quit and flutter kit until they quit, and it's like, nah, just keep going. Like, it hurts. Hell yeah, it hurts sometimes. But then, even when I was on the line and they came out with some of these new rules and regulations in the Army of like, you can't make one of your soldiers do, more than this many push-ups for corrective action. I was like, okay, cool. We're going to play that game. But they didn't say how those push-ups had to be done. So it's like, go halfway down and hold it. You want to play games? We can play games,
we'll
make it a lot harder than, doing, 15, 20 push-ups, 25 push-ups, whatever it was. You can only make me do 15 push-ups, aren't? Okay, cool. Go halfway down. You haven't completed one yet. See if you want to keep playing games, Yeah,
you've never done a clean push-up yet.
Yeah.
Sorry, start all over.
Yeah. We'd play games like that all the time, man. Play all kinds of stupid things, man, back in the day. But at the end of the day, it was all about just getting right, getting ready for the mission, getting ready to be overseas. And, it's funny because my mom and I were talking yesterday. We took her down to, we took her with us to go see the Texas State game. And she was sitting in the back seat, and we we're talking about different things. And she ran into one of her old students. My mom's a teacher, retired teacher. She ran into one of her old students. He's in the military and doing like S1 shop stuff, HR stuff like that. And he told her, yeah, it's great. I've been in for this many years. And, he's like, I thought about it, and I could have done, all these other jobs. I could have been artillery. I could have been infantry. I could have done this. He's like, but at the end of the day, my benefits, my pay was all going to be the same no matter what I did and when I get out. And I'm like, And she goes, yeah, I wish my sons would have thought about that when they joined. And I said, Mom, when we joined for the sole purpose to go to war. Like, that was our mindset. It wasn't we're joining to, have a career or, whatever the case was. When we joined, when we raised our right hand, it was to go protect our country, to go fight for our country. And that was a different mindset than, in today's world. It's a little bit different. Like, yes, every person that is joining knowing that there is a chance that they will go have to defend our country and our Constitution and all that stuff. I'm not trying to say that differently or degrade anything by no means. What I'm saying is that when we joined, there was a war already in place, and we were gonna, we raised our right hand to go into that war, knowing that
there was two theaters at that point.
There was two theaters. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So, and at one point, I was in Iraq and my baby brother was in Afghanistan at the same time. You know, like that's got to weigh. And there's so many, like I think about my mom, but how many other mothers, fathers were in that same situation where 1, 2, 3 of their kids were in multiple theaters at the same time, you know?
Right. All of them deployed.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. But, you know, like that just goes to a lot of what we talk about from, you know, from Boots to Suits, is that setting yourself up for success. This guy had a plan. Like that was his plan, was to go have a career in the military, do a job, get educated, so that when he gets out, he has prime opportunity in the corporate world to transition into a job that is always going to be there. You know, HR, you look at HR and, you know, we were talking about this earlier. There's multiple hats in the realm of HR. Like some people think HR is just human resources, but there's multiple things that go into human resources. You know, there's talent acquisition, which is your recruiting side. There's employee relations. There's total rewards. There's benefits. There's compliance. There's a whole plethora of things that fall under HR. And some people get very specialized in one or the other. Like I'm more specialized on the talent acquisition side and compliance side than, you know, the other, and employee relations. But from like the HR side, like that is not my wheelhouse. Like while I do know the ins and outs and the basics of it, like I'm always having to call somebody that's more knowledgeable. But there's people that fall into those jobs in the military and they are very well set up, you know, for that transition. And you know, and it's easier. But, you know, it's funny because while we're talking about that, one of the things that we were going to talk about today was on the resumes and making it more civilian friendly and all that stuff. It's funny because I just rewrote a resume for a veteran, for an Army veteran that did human resources for a number of years. He was kind of in between logistics and human resources. And so he had 2 great different jobs in the Army where, you know, those are 2 great things. Like logistics, there's a lot of companies out there that need somebody that can run their logistics programs. It's a great way to get into one of those bigger companies. And he also did HR. So now he's got both sides. And as I looked at the resume, it's like, okay, he knows HR from a military standpoint, not so much from a corporate standpoint, but does he have the basic knowledge and skills? Absolutely. And as I looked through that resume, I started realizing that there's a lot of things that I saw from any other Joe in the military that they put on the resumes, you know, was responsible for this many people, was responsible for this much of equipment, was responsible for this shop, whatever. And I'm like, we're not leaning into what you actually did in your HR function, or what you actually did in your logistics function, you know, in your time. And so, you know, a lot of that is just breaking down those things of making them more civilian friendly so people can understand, or for recruiters to understand, like, hey, this transitions very well into what we're looking for. Now, it doesn't necessarily say like I was the, you know, first sergeant of an S1 shop or battalion or whatever the case may be, that you're going to go and be a director in the civilian world, or, you know, something like a VP. Probably not, because there are still things that you need to understand and learn in the civilian world. But really understanding how to break down those skills and looking at his resume and looking at the jobs that he was applying for, it's like, okay, here's all the things that you need. This is why you're not getting a call, because the jobs are saying you need X, Y, and Z, and you're still writing this in military lingo. So 3 different branches here, right? Really 4, because you did Coast Guard. You doubled up, man. You doubled up. Between Coast Guard and Air Force, how different were the acronyms when you first transitioned? Completely different.
Yeah.
Right.
I think acronyms even change between career fields within the Air Force. Like there's certain acronyms we use, and then you go over to like the maintenance side or air traffic control or, you know, somewhere else, and they're using the exact same acronym, but it means something completely different.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't talk to somebody. I know. So when COVID was first going off, I was in New Jersey, and that hospital ship was coming into New York. So we were, right across the water from there. So we had to start preparing for emergency, like refuels, emergency landings. If that helicopter had an emergency, it would come to us. And so we were starting to prepare for that and trained a hot refuel helicopter, which nobody ever does really. So we were working with the Army and the Navy and us, and they found out they couldn't talk to the helicopter because their lingo was so much different. And so it just came to show that, like, we were trying to figure out this joint operation that had never been done before, and we couldn't even get on the same page with how to talk to one another.
Wow.
And so that was like the biggest rock we had to move out the gate, was how do we communicate?
Right.
So definitely huge differences.
Big differences in so when you look at it from going from military to civilian, like, there's definitely
a large gap.
There's a huge gap. And now you got to think about, is the person reviewing it on the other side able to understand what I'm trying to say? So let me give you a couple of examples of.
I know one acronym that threw me for a loop in the civilian world was ED. I've only ever known that as one thing.
That's what I was thinking right now.
Yeah, but executive director. But for the first time I heard that, I'm like, whoa, we're getting pretty personal in this conversation.
Yeah. And I don't wish that upon anybody.
No.
Well, too, also real quick, when you, like me being Navy personnel, if I was sending over my resume and I'm writing these acronyms or short writing my resume and I send it to, like, John, he may not, military brethren, but then he starts looking at it and he's like, I don't know what he just said. Because he's an Army guy, I'm a Navy guy. We're two different things. We're saying things that are same, but they're just totally different. Sometimes people talk to me and I'm like, can you say a little bit more on that? Because I don't understand. I wasn't in the Army or I wasn't in the Air Force. Like, you're using some words that are not, or letters that we don't use.
Yeah.
That's not us. And so that has to translate. You got the people on the other side that's looking at the resume, but and they could be military, but they weren't in your branch. It could be quite difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even there's the guy that runs over at First Baptist where our kids go to school. He runs security out there. And even like he's a Marine, former Marine. And I was chatting with him and he was just like throwing out all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, what the heck are you talking about, dude? Like, I don't understand this like, what did you call me?
Right. Right.
I don't understand any of this, man. Like, tone it down a little bit. I was in the Army. Come on. I was a paratrooper. I just know how to jump out of planes, man. I hit my head one too many times, I think. But like looking at this resume and looking at human resource manager, and he writes a couple of things in here. Planned and coordinated with the company commander per Army policy, conducted over 50 UAs with zero testing and turn-in errors over a 3-year period. So he's a human resource manager in the Army, and he's talking about how he conducted the UAs for that group of soldiers with no turn-in errors over a 3 period time. How does that relate to the civilian world?
Was he talking about urinalysis?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, he's talking about their drug test.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's talking about their drug test. Because, we got to do the 10%ers every so often. What is it, once a month or every quarter, whatever. I don't remember exactly. But do we do that in the civilian world?
No, not unless there's an incident.
We haven't done any of my job.
Yeah, unless you're right? Unless OSHA dictates that you have to because there was a near miss or there was an accident, relatable accident to whatever, then you're going to have to perform a UA. Now, most jobs will do a UA, a background in UA at the very beginning.
Sure.
But are you touching that?
No.
We're
send them
scheduling it.
somewhere.
We're sending them.
Yeah.
We're utilizing a third party that we've contracted with that will usually our background company that we've contracted with will do these things. So we send it up, we turn it all in, and then that third party will basically send you a notification saying, hey, you need to go do this, this, and this. You select the place that you want to go, the lab you want to go, the time you want to go, when you want to go, all that stuff, and it's done. You never touch it. So I've got this on my resume, and I'm turning this in and wondering why I can't land a job in the HR realm. So we've got to translate that. We've got to turn it around where we say, conducted background checks, within to maintain compliance within the standard of X, Y, and Z. It's real simple. Once you start to look at, how do we formulate this to a civilian HR role? And even in today's world, it is so much easier because we don't have to sit here and create magic with our mind and the words that we use, right? Before, we used to really have to sit here and really be creative in how we wrote our resumes, what sounded right, what word should I use? Do I need to use a dictionary to come up with a better sounding word to, to replace this phrase or whatever the case may be? Now you can take that in and say, hey, rewrite this, put this in ChatGPT and rewrite it for a more civilian friendly. Now, I wouldn't recommend that you take exactly what it gives you, but now you have an idea of where to start, Now you have an idea where to start. The other thing that really stood out to me was this resume was 3 pages long, man, 3 pages long. Again, I'm not looking at 3 pages. I don't have time. So I'm looking really at the first couple things. What I didn't see was I didn't see skills at the very top. So I wouldn't know if this applicant utilized the systems that I'm looking for. So from a HR standpoint, I might be looking for somebody that's used Greenhouse or Workday. I don't see it, none of those skills are up top. I've got to go all the way to the third page to look at what skills I have. Mm-hmm. And by the time I get to the third page, I'm like, man, I've already read through a lot of this and it doesn't stand out to me, But that's where a lot of veterans get stuck. A lot of veterans get stuck in the resume writing, and then they get stuck because they can't get to the table. They can't have that initial conversation, but it's because of simple little mistakes like this. Received and corrected over 180 combat action badges, and 41 permanent change of station awards within a 2-month period. That's really good detail of what you can do, but how do you civilianize that? How do you make that civilian friendly? Because nobody in the civilian world knows what it takes to process 180 combat action badges.
Well, we don't even know is that good? I mean, is that subpar or is that
right.
above and beyond? I think that's one thing I struggled with was there's stuff that while you're in is a big deal, right? But civilians don't care.
Right. If I was putting this on my eval, and trying to, level up, then it'd be great. Cause then I'm telling them hey, I protected over 200,000 or $2 million worth of equipment, this, that, and the third. Yay.
Pull that mic closer to you, brother.
On the outside of this whole thing, you doing $2 million in protection of military equipment, what does that say for me and my company here? So, and I had that on my resume. So, Mr. So-and-so, don't worry about it. I mean, I did the same. I took care of an ungodly amount of of records working in the AZ, a records guy, right? So it's, okay, I handled all these records, but then I didn't do anything. What was that for? Mm-hmm. What records? What kind of records? And so it just was empty. It was an empty space. I just put something there.
Yeah.
And it seems like a lot of us, including myself, have done this similar 1, 2, 3, check the box, do this, do that. And none of it doesn't translate well.
Right. So, well, back to Rudy's point though, what is 180? Is that good? Is that mid? Is that great? Is that excellent? where does that land on the on how you were registered,
On
like
the
on
spectrum.
the spectrum of are you good or are you great,
Right.
you know, what you do?
Yeah, because 180 could be excellent or it could be mid
Right.
all day,
Right.
and they don't know that because they're not there.
Yeah. So like the way I would rewrite this is because he says I received and corrected over 180. So I would rewrite that to make it more around compliance, you know, and then take that 180. And then he's also got tour awards and 41 permanent change of stations within a 2-month period. So like I would rewrite all of that and put it to where I'm quantifying the 180, and then I'm quantizing by how many % did I execute better in this period of time. So that way now it stands out like, okay, they had this, they got a problem because they had to correct 180 records. And in 2 months' time, they effectively did it by this much %. And then, you know, what are the parameters that you put in place moving forward that you're not correcting 180 records?
What's
right?
the impact?
What was the impact? What was the end result? You know, those are the things that will make you stand out and just be more, you know, will read better, because as a civilian, like, I don't know what that means. 180, like combat action badges, like how much paperwork is involved in that? You know, is that a compliance thing? Is it relatable to compliance? Like it is more relatable to compliance, you know? Who looks at these? Where do they go? Who did you turn them into? You know, like all these things, like, do they go to Congress? If they go to Congress, put that in there. Had 100% effective, you know, whatever to Congress, and 100% accurate on, you know, this many records. Like,
now, would you say in that is also like, trying to think, like a percentage above the standard, right? So, you know, best, no, I'm just throwing this out here, but like bested the standard by 13%, or, you know, let's say the standard is 80% get approved, you're able to get 90% approved, like highlighting how far above what the minimum standard is that you reached.
Yeah. You always want to do, you always want to highlight whatever the standard was. You want to be able to show that you improved it by some sort of percentage. That's where the quantifying and quantizing those things on your resume. And anytime I run a resume through, there's a lot of different tools, but there's these scores that'll score your resume and how they compare to others that are similar to your background and all that stuff. And one of the number one things that it always shows me or tells me how to improve on a resume is you're not using enough action words and you're not using enough quantization in your resume and showing where you've improved whatever the job was by this much % or that %. So, you know, those are some of the big things that we've talked about a lot, you know, early on in the podcast of this, how you make your resume stand out is quantifying, quantizing, and using action words, you know, all over the place. And then the other thing is, you know, there was like 6 or 7 bullet points for every single job that he had on here. That's too many. That's when you start getting into that 3-4 pages, and like really you just want 3 or 4 bullet points per each one.
What would you say the average length of a resume should be?
2 pages.
2 pages.
Now, some advice I had been given in the past was your most current position gets the most bullets.
Right.
And then towards the latter part of your career, you know, it's just 1 or 2 quick hits because it was, you know, 10 years ago, whatever. But at what point do you quit? So like my resume, I think it goes to 14, and then anything before 14 was just my titles and the years I held those titles. There's nothing specific.
Yeah.
So I go back 10 years. You know, what do you recommend? How far back you go in describing what you did?
I think every person is going to be a little bit different, just depending on what they did after those 10 years. You know, if it's like, for instance, on this one, I went back and I said, okay, we had job title changes in the resume and also duty station changes, but the title didn't change. but we have it as different jobs, right? So we had it from this year to this year, and each one of those had 4 or 5 different bullet points within it. And at that point, it's like, okay, you got to condense that. You got to stop putting every duty station you went to and just make it 1 or 2 different jobs in the military. So like for you, I would say you're probably doing it the right way by taking after 10 years of just putting the job titles in the years that you did it. But also keep in mind, like if there's something that really needs to be highlighted there, like make sure you highlight that, you know, in your in your resume. It's hard to say, like, should I pull it out? Should I not pull it out? I go back and forth with it all the time. It's like, you know, after 12, 15 years, like I don't really need to have that on my resume, you know, anymore as far as like all the bullet points, you know, but if it's showing progression, maybe, but I think putting your job title, the years you were there, the company you're with, and then moving to the next one, then like getting to the meat and potatoes, like, you know, because sometimes too, man, we talked about this earlier of unconscious bias. Sometimes recruiters look at resumes that have a lot of job history and they say, we're really looking for someone that's going to be here for a long time. And this person is looking like they're on the ladder of getting closer to retirement. And that's an unconscious bias. And it happens. So it happens pretty often. Like they can start to guess your age by the number of years that you've been in the workforce. That's why I always tell people don't put the years that you graduated on your resume. Don't put your picture on your resume. You know, that was a big thing a few years ago was everybody was putting a picture of themselves on the resume so they could kind of see who they're looking at, but there was so much unconscious bias towards it. People made up feelings off of somebody's picture. It's not a good idea to do it. And then same thing with the years that you went to school. Like never, don't put I graduated high school in 99 or 2000, whatever it is, because it's just going to age you out. You know, people see that and they're like, oh, this person's probably not looking to stay very long. They're just looking for their next quick job where they can do 5, 6 years and then, you know, they're ready to retire, and we're not looking to do all that. So there's a lot of little things that unfortunately get caught up in that unconscious bias area. And we do a lot of training around it, but it's still, to this day, it happens, and it's always going to continue to happen because just like we have veterans getting into the civilian world every single year, we have college graduates getting into the workforce every single year. And so when you don't have that training already, or you don't have those expertise, or you don't have, you know, the all those years of experience behind it, like you will fall into those traps of unconscious bias and things of that nature very quickly. But yeah, this was like this was a prime example of a 3-page resume that had a lot of great stuff in it, but just really sat flat from a, you know, again, like the standard, you know, maintain $3 million worth of equipment, you know, did X, Y, and Z, but never like put it into civilian terms, you know.
So this was something else that I noticed on this one too, that high school diploma. Is it highlighting the fact that you graduated high school?
Yeah.
For your education piece. Like, I think that's kind of
should be a given.
Well, especially if you're going to put any other kind of college degree in there, right? Like you had to do that first step first.
Yeah. 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 And that's a great thing to point out. Like you don't need to put, if you've got an associate's degree and then you've got a bachelor's degree, like you don't need to put your high school diploma. Like it's pretty obvious. And I would say if the recruiter can't decipher between that or put 2 and 2 together, it's probably a company you don't want to work for.
Right.
I know one of my first mistakes I made with my very first resume, because I was so proud of it, right? It was like my major awards and decorations.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know, and my different medals I was proud of, you know, and I gave it to one of my friends to review it for me, and she just made fun of me. She's like, no one cares that you're the NCO of the quarter. Like, get rid of it. No one cares that you got the volunteer service medal. Get rid of it, you know? So it's also understanding, and it's not a punch in the face, right? It's not to take away from your career or the things you accomplished. they just do not translate over, like we were talked about with the combat action badges and stuff. It doesn't translate. And so it's not a big deal in the civilian world. In the military, I mean, it points towards promotions and, all those things. But in the civilian world, and so it's also figuring, I guess, that piece out. Like, what, you swallow your pride. Cool. You still did good. You did some cool stuff. Be proud of yourself, but you don't need to blast it in your resume. You need to take those things out, and it's not taken away from your accomplishments during your service. Yeah.
There was a big debate on LinkedIn not too long ago of, it was a recruiter that just made a post, and it stirred the pot. Like it definitely stirred the pot, but he was like, to all my veterans out there, leave your awards and decorations off your resume. Those are just cookies from the cookie jar, and we don't need to see them. And like, boy, did it get heated, right? Because we're proud of those things. Like, you can't tell, as a civilian, like, well, you couldn't have accomplished that. You didn't do that. You didn't, like, those are things that we're definitely proud of. But to your point, like, do they help you get the job? Or are they taking up real estate on your resume? 9 times out of 10, they're taking up real estate on your resume. And it's unfortunate. Like, just because you have a Bronze Star, like, that's a high award. Be proud of it. That's something that you should cherish, but does it make you more qualified than anybody else in the room to get that job? Not really. That Bronze Star you got because of whatever actions that you did in a moment, or the selfless service that you provided. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're more qualified. And when it comes to the job, these companies aren't they're looking for the most qualified and the best bang for their buck,
Should you use some of those awards for pointing out your character in the interview? Like, I got this award. The prison, I got a special act award for doing X. Would it potentially show that I have, some skill in protecting you?
I mean,
you know what I mean? Like,
what if it's a remote job? Like, it'd be kind of weird to be swung by the house to protect me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's always going to be one of those things where if it's relatable to the job that you're applying for, then yes, you should certainly highlight that you received this award or accommodation because it, directly reflects the type of work that you did within that industry and that service. Mm-hmm. What we're talking mostly about is like your Army accommodation awards or medals or your Bronze Stars or, what's another big one? Like the nonprofit or the, a lot of guys doing voluntary work.
The volunteer service. Member.
Yes. Like stuff like that. Like, it's just eating up real estate on your resume that no one's going to look at, no one cares about. You could use it for other things,
Something I noticed too about like awards, because I was reading some resumes and I was looking, and I guess it's kind of like that unconscious bias too, right? But this person had some awards in there, and they had an award from like 2012, and then an award from like 2018. It's like, okay, what weren't you doing for 6 years?
Yeah.
Why didn't you win something for 6 years?
Almost exposing yourself.
Yeah. And then, because you don't know how highly competitive these things are.
Right.
But now there's gaps in your performance. So you just kind of sat on your heels for 6 years, and then you decided to get going again, and huge chance that wasn't what really happened.
Yes.
But optically, as you read it, you can't help but it starts glaring at you. Mm-hmm. This person wasn't that great for 6. So are we in the not that great lull? Is when I'm getting this person, or am I getting him in the, the person at their peak?
Yeah. That's a good observation, because the reality is that a lot of times it comes down to perception and optics, how one perceives what you've done in your career versus what you've actually done in your career, and how well can you translate that onto a piece of paper That's almost going to take 30 seconds to look at, you know? The other thing is cover letters. I get asked all the time, like, should I write a cover letter? Hell no. Throw that thing away. Don't waste your time on that. No one's looking at them. I'm not looking at them. Manager isn't looking at them. The thank you letter, if you got to the table, the thank you letter goes a long way, you know? Talking about ChatGPT, I think I was laughing about it the other day. I was telling you that I had somebody that interviewed with us. Great candidate. He was a great candidate. And then he sends me a thank you email after he met with the first manager, and he was like, hey, I'm really looking forward to, you know, taking next steps. Like, I think that my skills align very well. Like, he was a sharp guy, right? But clearly he used ChatGPT to polish his thank you note. And the reason why I know that is because ChatGPT will always tell you, here is a more polished version of your message or whatever it is. And so he literally copied and pasted the whole thing from ChatGPT and then put it in the email to include the subject line that ChatGPT gave him that he never changed in the subject line. And then, you know, and that, you again, these are tools that we have. These are tools that are out there that can help you, but you also need to be careful on how you use them, right? You have to get the idea from some of these AI tools to help you polish your resume or your writing or whatever the case may be. Take them and do that, but you also need to go back and reword it to make it fit your style and who you are. And what's the tool that you use a lot to help you make sure that it's got your style of writing, and then also that it tells you, it forces you to not utilize what ChatGPT is giving you, to where it's like, okay, I have the idea, but
I use Grammarly a lot.
Grammarly, that's what it is. Yeah.
So I'll use, like, even for like schoolwork, I use ChatGPT to at least give me some framework, you know, if I'm hitting writer's block or whatever the case is. And then I take what ChatGPT gives me and I put it into Grammarly, and Grammarly has an AI detection. So first I run it through, because ChatGPT makes a lot of mistakes. And so clear up all those, you know, misspellings or, you know, just the sentence structures. And then I hit it over into the AI detection and start cleaning it up, you know, and then I reword, you know, until I get rid of all the AI detection. But yeah, because at the end of it, you know, I almost feel like I'm writing dumber, so it sounds like me. Because, you know, you see the AI version, it's so polished and it reads so well. And I'm like, I don't talk like that.
Right.
You know, so, you know, you have to kind of, I don't know, bring it down to my level. But yeah, you rework all those sentence structures until, you know, there's no more detection. So Grammarly is amazing, because if you're in college right now, all your papers go through an AI detection. And you can get canned real quick if you're not citing it properly.
Yeah, my school gave us Grammarly for free.
Use it. Yeah. Grammarly is a great tool. I have it on my phone, but I don't use it as much. It started to annoy me because it would always like try to change things for me, even in my text. And so I'm like, I just took it off, right?
Yeah, that would get annoying.
Yeah.
How much of going through the matrix do y'all use for these resumes? Like, are y'all sending through a machine more, or are you personally sitting down reading through 100 emails or resumes?
Yeah, so we have things called applicant tracking systems, and there's multiple versions of these systems out there. Workday, Greenhouse, those are some of the bigger ones. What's the other one? That's a big one. Can't think of it right now. Workday, Greenhouse, like there's a lot of smaller versions of these applicant tracking systems, like Breezy HR, and there's hundreds of them out there. But the way they work is that when somebody applies, it'll notify you that an application came through, right? And so every version is different. The higher end ones, like your Workday and your Greenhouse and Taleo, things like that, like you can build those to the way you want them. So, you know, the more money that you put into those systems, the more tools that you have with them. And so like they have AI ranking systems in there where like it'll pull all the resumes and it'll rank them based off of the job description and all that stuff, right? Those are extra costs from the house version of Workday, which is already expensive, or Greenhouse that's already expensive. So some companies use it, others don't. I've seen how they work, and you know, at the end of the day, like it's the reality is every recruiter is going to have their own workflow, and the way that they go through and cipher through applicants. But all these applications come through, and then they all get piled up in the system, right? So you click on that particular requisition, that job, and it shows you all your applicants in there. And then you could quickly, from there, you can start looking at location. You know, are they in the location that I need them to be? You know, are they open to relocation? So if they're not, then they're not in the location, like they automatically get pulled out. And then you start looking at the skills, right? And then you start, before you even look at the resume, because the ATS system is going to pull those skills from your resume up front, so you know what you're looking at. What are their job titles? You know, what was their previous job title? Because it'll pull it to the top there. I should probably get in, and somewhere I have some screenshots of what these ATS systems look like on the inside.
What is ATS? Speaking of acronyms,
Applicant Tracking System. Thank you, sir. Thank you for calling me out, man. That's a good one. Yeah, so I have some screenshots of like Workday and what it looks like on the inside, because it's really like small like this, and it just shows the person's name, their job title, their location, you know, and then some of their skills. And then there's, like, you could set it up, like I said, you can set it up, and I built this, you know, different ways for different companies, but you can set it up differently for, you know, have different tabs, and each tab will do something different for that, you know, for that workflow. And then you can finally get to the resume, and it'll show you like a very small version of the resume, or you can blow it up and actually see the resume if you want to. But before you even get to that resume, if you have like 200 applicants, you're going to go through all these other steps to try to get rid of the vast majority of them. Do they have the job title? Are they in the location? Do they have enough experience? Do they have this many years of experience? You know, if you're applying for like a manager level job and you haven't been a manager, like, you've got to be able to pull your last job on your resume to show that you were at least in some type of leadership level to apply for that job. Because if it doesn't even show manager there, like, you're not getting looked at, you know? So really look at all those different, you know, what the job is, what the job description is, and make sure that your resume reads to that specific job. Otherwise, you know, you could have made a simple mistake by not putting a certain title in, you know, at your last job, and now you're not even getting looked at, you know?
So you were talking about, you know, having 200 applicants.
Mm-hmm.
I know on LinkedIn, sometimes you look at some jobs, especially the remote jobs that are like around anywhere in the country, 1,200 applicants.
Yeah.
Do you even waste your time applying for those?
Depending on how long they've been sitting there. But those are the type when you see on LinkedIn that there's like 1,200 applications already in the system. I would look at how long has this job been there. If it's like a couple of days, probably not. You know, if it's a couple of days, probably not. If it's, you know, maybe 2 weeks or longer, I would apply. But the way I would apply at that point is I would apply first, and then I would try to reach out to the recruiter on LinkedIn that's working that job. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they reach out to the recruiter and say, hey, I'm interested in this job, but they never applied to the job. For me, it's like, okay, that's great, but you still have to go apply for the job, because we're following, you know, whatever standard that our company set, and I just can't bring you, even if you were a referral, I'm still going to ask you to apply for the job. I need your application in the system to show that you went through the same process that everybody else went through. We weren't giving favoritism to anybody else. So, you know, if you're going to do that, if you're going to reach out to the recruiter, make sure that you apply to the job first, and then reach out to the recruiter, and then just drop a quick note. Hey, just wanted to reach out. I'm so-and-so. I think I would be a great fit for this particular job, whatever it is. If it has a requisition number to it, this requisition number, I applied on this date and this time. I hope to hear from you soon. You know, because if, you know, there's so many people, like I wish I can pull up my LinkedIn right now. I've got a very specific job that I'm looking for. It's a developer, but it's a very specific developer. And I have so many people applying and reaching out to me saying, hey, I'm interested in this particular DevOps job, but they don't have that specific language that we're looking for. And they've got a lot of different front end, back end, DevOps on their resume. They're very experienced, software engineers or developers. They don't have the specific language. They don't have a specific program. But there's two things that really annoy the heck out of me with this. Is one, I put in the job, it's a hybrid job. You have to be in this location. The amount of people that apply from outside just because they're trying to find their next job, just because they're trying to get their foot in the door some way, somehow, or just hope that maybe I didn't get enough applicants to fill it in this location, the number of people that apply that are just wasting my time because they're not even remotely in the location, or I even put US based only and I'm getting candidates from all over the world. And then the other side is the amount of people that have reached out to me but didn't go and apply for the job. Like, I'm not getting your LinkedIn and looking at your LinkedIn profile. I'm not going to your LinkedIn profile if you haven't applied for the job. I'm spending my time looking through our applicant tracking system, and if I don't find people there, then I'm going to use other resources that I have to go source for the candidates that I'm looking for. So, yeah, there's a lot of different nuances to recruiting and the way that you attack looking for that job, and but it all comes down to your resume. What are you doing with your resume to make it stand out, and just reflect that what I've done in the military translates to the specific job that I'm looking for in the civilian world.
I will say my only real bone to pick with you, and it's only with you because you're a recruiter and you happen to be in front of me, but when you upload your resume, when you're applying for a job, and then you have to write in all the information that you just uploaded out of your resume.
Come on.
So
Come on.
I got you, bro. I got you. So that is because the person that built that applicant tracking system for them wasn't experienced enough when they built and launched that applicant tracking system. Because when you go in and you're building these things out, you can tell it. If they have a resume, I want to parse from the resume. I don't want to put all this other stuff in again. I don't want to have to fill out my name, and I don't want the applicants to have to fill out their name and their last 5 jobs and their education. Like, we're going to pull all of that from the resume. Now, if they don't have a resume and they're applying for a job, then yes, they got to pull it on in. But like, come on, we're talking about jobs that you are going to have a resume for. Mm-hmm. These aren't entry level positions that you don't necessarily need a resume for. But yeah, that's I get it, man, because I've applied for many jobs too where I've like put my resume in and then like spend another 10 minutes filling the same crap that I just turned in on my resume. And I'm like, this is stupid.
Copy and pasting.
There's a couple of systems out there that are notorious for that. I think Taleo is one of them, and IQN I think might be the other one. I can't remember. There's so many out there, but Workday, Greenhouse, like, you can definitely build it to where you don't have to do all that stuff. But it all goes into who's building it and who's certified to build it. And then sometimes like Workday's really good about it because they won't let a company just buy the system and then launch it. You have to go through an implementation process that takes anywhere from 6 months to a year to actually fully build it out, test it before you go live. And it's really, while there's some things that you can't customize, it's pretty much customizable to the way you want it to work for you. But some of these like other systems that are smaller, like, you're going to end up having to do all this extra stuff. Taleo's probably the worst one. But like right now we use Breezy HR, and it's not my favorite of applicant tracking systems, but in there I have it turned on to where like resume, if they don't have a resume, they can't apply, for one. And two, I don't need all this extra stuff because I'm just going to parse it from the resume. The system doesn't do it for me because it's such a small system. It doesn't have the technology like others. And so I still have to parse it in, but at least I'm telling my applicants, you don't have to do all that stuff. Like, I'll take care of it on the back end. So
I know my current position, we were talking about some of your woes, right? And so we're hiring, and we actually put a series of go no go questions in like the process on LinkedIn, right? So you had to have this many years experience. You had to have these certifications. Like these had to happen. People just lie.
Right.
They just lie. And they're like, yep, I have it. And then you read the resume and you're like, you don't even have the most basic of qualifications for the, it's people are just fishing, thinking maybe I'm desperate enough that I'll just hire someone and train them on the job or, know. And so it does get frustrating because you just go through so many non-candidates that just wasted your time applying for positions that.
Because if you check mark the no-go, then eventually it just kicks you out and so you don't have the qualifications to do the job.
Yeah. And they figured that out pretty quickly. So they're just putting what they need to try to get to the next step. But like, seriously, just don't do it, man, because it's so frustrating on the hiring side, the amounts of candidates to actual candidates, non-candidates, like that you're just going through. And then depending on how you're doing things or the system, like you do have to, at the end of the day, you do have to disposition them. You have to disposition every candidate and say, whether or not, I know there's probably people out there saying, bullshit, I've applied for jobs and never heard back. Well, you're supposed to be dispositioning your candidates and letting them know whether or not the job is still open, if they were moved on to the next step. Now, they're not going to give you the reasons why they weren't moved on to the next step. They're going to get the generic, thank you for your application, blah, blah, blah. But every candidate that applies should be getting some type of disposition, if they're moving on or not moving on, so that they can move on with their lives. I know this for a fact that it doesn't happen. Again, recruiters are terribly busy a lot, and but it's not an excuse because there are systems. There's ways inside these systems that you can do it all at one time. You can move things along, and as you go to next steps, you can move people out and disposition them accordingly. But you hear it all the time. Like, I applied for this job and then I had an initial conversation, then I was ghosted. I never heard from them again. That's the most frustrating thing is getting ghosted, because you don't know, like, what did I do something? Did I not do something? Like, am I in the mix? Am I not in the mix? I just want to know. I just want to know so I can move on with myself, with my life, and keep applying or whatever. But it's so funny because back in 2014, 2015 era, it was the candidate that was ghosting the recruiter all the time. And in today's world, it's the recruiter ghosting the candidate, and partially because the market has 180'd. Back then it was a candidate's market where, we were looking hard to find more candidates to fill jobs. And in today's market, it's the employer market. So, there's more candidates than the jobs that we're looking for out there. So
I just got problems with people actually showing up to the interview. That is freaking burns me up, man.
Yeah.
Like, they don't show up. I call you. We set up a time, got the date. We're all square. You don't show up.
Yeah.
Because we have our interviews are panels.
Yeah.
So there's a process for me, and then you don't show up.
Yeah.
That's irritating, big time.
Yeah, but it happens even with me, with developers. Like, I had 3 developers on my calendar for initial conversations, on Friday, and I had 2 of the 3 not show up. No, can we reschedule? No email. No, they accepted the calendar invite. They, we had initial back-to-back, via email, and then it's like, hey, you're not going to hurt my feelings if you don't show up. But also, if you're not going to show up or you're not interested anymore, just let me know so I could free my time up.
Absolutely, because it's just a process for me. Like, just having to get those people, I have to email you to, hey, what's your calendar look like? You guys available? What days are you available to do an interview for? Do Monday. Cool.
Yeah.
Then I got to go run through all this stuff to get it to happen. And we get there, you're not there.
Yeah.
And it's multiple. Like the other day, I had 3 interviews in one day, and not one of them showed up.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
And don't want to say like that's specific to any type of work, because it happens across the board in all different industries and all different, you know, professions. Like I've had recruiters not show up to a recruiter interview. So, you know, it happens. But man, this is a great conversation.
Yes, sir.
You know, great conversation about, you know, just diving in. I know we talk a lot about these resumes and things that we can do. And we just gave a few examples. We didn't deep dive into this stuff, but I'll tell you what, if you're out there and you've been listening to our podcast and you want a review of your resume, you know, shoot it to me at info@frombootstosuits.com. I will take a look at it. I will try to get to it as quickly as I can, but I will let you know. I'll respond to you and let you know, what the timeline looks. But if you're looking for someone to take a look at that resume and critique it around, making it more civilian friendly, whatever the case may be, I'm happy to look at it, happy to help in any way I can, give you advice, interview prep. That's the second step, is the interview prep, and then understanding, your capabilities going into that interview and how to respond, how to react. That's all part of the process, but that's another conversation for another day.
Yes.
So appreciate you guys tuning in. Get yourself some mugs. They're on the website from bootstosuits.com. Get yourself a mug, get yourself a t-shirt. We appreciate all that you do. Thank you guys for being here, and we'll see you guys next time. See you.
I got a question.